Hi and welcome back to Joe Talks Cars and welcome to another video. In this video I'm just going to give you a bit of a rundown on the costs associated with owning a Porsche Cayman S, specifically the 987.1. I've owned the car for 7 months now, so although I haven't made any repairs to the car, I've got some general running costs to give you an idea on the ownership experience. So I bought the car at the end of June 2020. I paid £14,995 for the car, and it had 51,684 miles on it. Since then, it's now got just over 55,000 on it, so I've done about 3,300 miles in the year. So to maintain the car, I haven't actually had to spend any money on repairs. It's mainly just been servicing and some items replaced at the same time. So the bills have actually been really low. As you'll have seen from the thumbnail, I was really surprised at some of the bills I found in the paperwork for this car. Some of the bills the previous owners had to pay for has been absolutely crazy. I would have been devastated if that had been my bill. So first of all, I got my car checked over at a specialist garage near my house. They specialise in all German cars. The guy that owns it is a Porsche enthusiast, so I know the car's in safe hands and they're used to dealing with them. He only charged £36 for a check over, so I was really happy with that. They found nothing that they were concerned about, apart from like a leak around one of the sumps. I then went online and bought a K&N air filter because it was going in for a service in the following week. So that cost £65. I'll pop a link in the description for that. So I had a major service done on the car, and at the same time, because of the white smoke that was pluming out the back of it, I felt like the AOS could do with a replacement. It definitely could. It was filled with oil, so it really did need doing. So the cost, including doing the AOS, was £480, so really not bad at all for major service. That was all spark plugs and everything. They did notice, as I said in the used car check, that it did have a leak around the gearbox sump. So there's a bit of oil coming out. So they suggested that it probably wouldn't be the worst idea to go back for a gearbox service. Change the diff oil and the sump gasket all at the same time. So I took it back a week later and that cost £339.79. So I think that's really good. The amount of hours that it took for them to do it, I think it's great. The general cost of running this car, obviously you've got your MOT every year. You're around £35 to £40 for one of those. My insurance is £24.35 a month, so it's really cheap insurance for me. Like I said, it will depend on your circumstances, but that's what I pay. The road tax is quite expensive, so to lessen the burden of paying it all out in one go, I do it monthly, so it's £50.75 a month. So it's very expensive road tax. So it's in the top bracket for road tax. So the fuel costs, I tend to run the car on 98 RON fuel if it's available. I prefer to go to Tesco. It does come in a bit cheaper and it's about £1.25 a litre at the moment. So the fuel costs over the last sort of 7 months, I've spent about £819 on fuel. The last thing I want to talk about is just the depreciation of the vehicle. So when you buy these cars, you don't expect them to lose so much money. It's not like having a new car that can lose half its value in the first year. These should hold, and they've hit a point now where they're not really moving. So I bought the car for £14,995 and put in my details into Auto Trader, which is a little bit of a guide on what your car could be worth. They believe it's selling for around £13.5. So £1,495 is potentially what I've lost on the car. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure, and I could probably get a little bit more private, so I don't think I've lost a lot of money, if anything. So, all that considered, with the depreciation, the total cost of the last 7 months will be £3,760, which seems like a lot, but nearly £1,500 of that was depreciation, which I'll never realise until I come to sell the car. Assuming that you'd be running the car for 12 months, so my insurance comes in at £292. The car tax is £585 if you pay in one instalment. You'd be looking at fuel costs around £1,400 to £1,500 if you were doing about 6,000 miles a year like I do. And your MOT would be £35. So you'd be looking at a cost of around £2,394, providing you are annually serviced in the car. So Porsche recommend these cars aren't serviced every year, it's every 2 years. But I feel that's too long, and I think some of the problems that people have experienced with these cars have come from not changing the oil regularly enough. These cars don't get driven that much, so the oil could actually degrade over time. So it's always a good idea to do a minor service followed by a major every single year. So as I said, the previous owners had some really, really big expenses on this car. I looked through the folder the other night and I was really, really shocked on how much money it had cost. The car's always been looked after by a Porsche main dealer. So as you can imagine, it's a lot more expensive than where I take my car. I'm not 100% sure on their labour rates because they don't display that on the invoice. You just get figures of how much things cost. I'm assuming labour has got a lot to do with it, although Porsche parts prices are quite a lot. So in the last major bill the car had, the owner did a minor service on the car, which cost £312. They did a brake fluid change at £79.17. They did an aircon service, which cost £124.17. They did the drive belt at £125. They did both front springs, I'm assuming they were cracked, at £635.28. They did all 6 coil packs and a plug. I think the coil packs, because of where they're positioned, the plastic tends to crack on them, so it's kind of one of those things that you would expect to have to replace fairly often on these cars, especially if it's driven out in the rain. They did wipers all the way around, so that cost £60, which is a lot for wipers. They did exhaust nut bolts, clamps and gaskets. So I'm not entirely sure what was involved in this, but I'm assuming they'd all sort of rotted away all the way along the exhaust. So various nuts and bolts and clamps. That cost £438.26. I'm assuming a lot of that was actually labour, and they probably can't access the parts very easily, so it probably was quite involved. And then they got a couple of new tyres to top it off, which brought the bill to £3,842.64. Now, if my car went into the garage for a minor service and I got a bill like that, I would be absolutely mortified. But it just goes to show what these cars can cost you pretty much out of the blue. That owner probably didn't realise all that needed doing. They probably knew about the aircon and things like that, but springs they might have not realised, and the coil packs are the same. So it just goes to show, doesn't it, how much you can actually spend on these cars. So they'd done a major service prior to that. That cost £880 for a major service, so more than double what I paid at my local garage. They've also done a minor service on the car, and while they did the minor service, they did the drive belt, the steering arm and the brake fluid, and that cost £1,085, and that's for a minor service. There are numerous bills for tyres, as you can imagine. These cars like to go through tyres pretty quickly. I'd be surprised if you got a year out of a set of tyres, especially the rears. So 4 tyres cost £918. So all in all, it can be really expensive from Porsche ownership. I think I've been really, really lucky with my car in that it hasn't actually cost me that much money. But then again, nothing's broken on it. It's just been general maintenance. I haven't done many miles in it, and with it being an old car, things will break on it. Things are bound to go wrong, and it's going to start costing me a lot of money, I'm sure. But I think what I've demonstrated here is that as long as you find a really good, reputable, independent garage, that can save you a fortune. The garage I go to, he has a Porsche. Lots of people with Porsches take them to him, and his labour rate is probably a quarter of what it is at Porsche. He uses all Porsche genuine parts, unless I specifically ask him not to, and it's one of the main reasons why I wasn't put off buying a Porsche, because I knew I could get it looked after locally, and I think that's really important. If you're thinking about buying one of these cars, I suggest you find a local garage that you trust that can look after it. That will save you so much money in the long term. So when you think about new cars, when you factor in the depreciation you get with a new car, it makes the Porsche seem really reasonable. So for example, the new Vauxhall Astra Estate, costing £26,000. After 3 years and 30,000 miles, it's only worth £7,500. That means it's lost 18,000 in 3 years, or over 6,000 a year. So I feel like £6,000 would comfortably run a Porsche, even with some of the larger bills that I've already shown you. So I hope you found this interesting. Was it more or less than what you were expecting? If you drop some comments below. If you've liked the video, if you could give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. My next video is going to be a full walk round of the car and a bit of a review as well to show you the spec. So thanks for watching, see you next time.